ever slam on your brakes because, like, you swear that stop sign just kind of materialized out of nowhere?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Turns out it wasn't magic or anything. It was
Uh,
just my brain seriously needing a coffee refuel.
we've all been there,
Right.
that feeling of fatigue just
Yes.
creeping in. But you sent us a fascinating source,
Yes.
a driver training manual,
Okay.
entirely focused on staying alert, specifically for truckers.
Which I gotta admit, at first I was like, what's this got to do with me?
Yeah,
But the deeper I got, the more I realized these aren't just tips for like hauling freight.
right.
They're life hacks for anyone who wants to stay sharp, especially behind the wheel.
It really highlights how crucial alertness is in any situation.
It does. So
Yeah.
first up, this manual dives right into the science of sleep debt, and it gets pretty fast. They compare it
Yeah.
to actual financial debt.
Okay.
You wouldn't keep maxing out your credit card assuming you can just ignore the bill forever, right?
And just like financial debt, sleep debt can have serious consequences.
So, yeah.
The manual stresses that you're essentially borrowing energy from your future self,
I like that.
and eventually that debt comes due.
And those consequences are way scarier than a late fee.
Oh, yeah.
The manual really emphasizes how sleep debt can impact reaction time
Right.
and judgment, which, when you think about a trucker hauling a massive load,
Yeah.
kind of terrifying, right?
Sure.
But then I started thinking about how that applies to me when I'm driving even my little car.
Exactly. Even a small lapse in judgment or a delayed reaction can have significant consequences regardless of what you're driving.
Oh, totally.
Hmm.
Now, one thing that really got me thinking was when the manual mentioned the average person needs 7 to 8 hours of sleep.
Okay.
Is that really enough? I feel like I've heard so many different things.
That's where it gets interesting.
Oh, yeah.
The manual briefly touches on individual sleep needs, but research suggests that genetics, age, and even lifestyle factors
Sure.
all contribute to how much sleep our bodies require.
So how do we figure out what's right for us?
Right.
I mean, I have friends who swear they function just fine on 6 hours,
Yeah.
and others who need a solid 9 hours to even form a coherent sentence.
It's about tuning into your own body's signals.
Okay.
The manual doesn't go into detail here, but I think it's worth exploring tools like sleep diaries or even consulting a sleep specialist
Okay.
to determine your personal sleep needs.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like finding the right workout routine.
Uh-huh.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Right.
Speaking of routines, the manual also dives into the importance of timing,
Okay.
especially when it comes to alertness.
Right.
For example, it points out that most trucking accidents happen between midnight and 6 a.m.
Wow.
Even if we aren't driving a truck, this says something about our natural rhythms, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
This ties into our circadian rhythm,
right.
our internal clock that regulates our sleep-wake cycles.
Okay.
We're naturally more prone to drowsiness during those early morning hours,
Right.
even if we've had enough sleep.
Which explains why I'd turn into a zombie if I schedule an early morning meeting.
Right.
It's like my brain just hasn't caught up with the rest of the world yet.
And that's why the manual recommends scheduling trips.
Yeah.
And I think this is where we can all relate.
Okay.
During times when we'd normally be awake,
Okay.
it's about working with
Yeah.
rather than against our natural peaks and dips in alertness.
Okay. So if I'm a night owl, maybe that early morning presentation isn't the best idea.
Right.
And trying to pull an all-nighter when I'm naturally a morning person is just asking for trouble.
Exactly.
Right.
Understanding your chronotype,
Yes.
whether you're a morning lark, a night owl, or somewhere in between,
Okay.
can be a game changer.
Now, we all know that feeling of needing a boost when tiredness hits.
Yeah,
And what's the first thing most of us reach for? A giant cup of coffee, right?
it's a common go-to.
But the manual actually cautions against relying on caffeine,
Okay.
or even those quick fixes like opening a window to combat drowsiness.
Which, let's be honest, we've all tried at some point.
Oh, totally.
Like-
Blasting the AC, downing another espresso,
Yeah.
anything to feel a little more human.
Right.
But the manual explains that these are just short-term solutions.
Right.
Kind of like slapping a Band-Aid on a much deeper problem.
They might feel like they're working in the moment,
Right.
but they're not addressing the underlying fatigue.
And relying on them too heavily can actually backfire, right?
Of course.
Like you get used to that caffeine jolt and eventually need more and more to get the same effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, you're masking the real issue,
Right.
sleep deprivation.
Which is a recipe for disaster, especially when you're behind the wheel.
Precisely. And that's where the manual takes a really interesting turn, introducing a concept that I think many people aren't even aware of.
Microsleep.
Okay, microsleeps.
Yeah.
The name alone is already making me a little uneasy.
Sure.
What exactly are we talking about here?
Essentially, these are brief, unintentional episodes of sleep
Okay.
that can last for just a few seconds.
Okay.
They often occur when we're sleep deprived and trying to fight off drowsiness, but the scary part is
Yeah.
we might not even realize it's happening.
So, like, our brain just takes a quick power nap without asking permission.
Right.
That's terrifying. And I'm guessing this isn't just a problem for truck drivers.
You're right to be concerned. They can happen to anyone, anytime, whether you're driving, working on a crucial project, or even just having a conversation.
Wow. Okay, so the manual focuses on truckers,
Right.
but this is definitely something we all need to be aware of. What are some of the warning signs? The manual lists several, and it's important to note that these apply to everyone, not just drivers.
Okay.
Have you ever caught yourself yawning uncontrollably, even if you don't feel particularly tired?
Oh, all the time, especially during long meetings. Sometimes I feel like I'm going to yawn my jaw right off.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
The manual also lists things like your eyes closing or going out of focus involuntarily,
Right.
having trouble keeping your head up,
Yep.
experiencing wandering or disconnected thoughts.
It's just those last two sound incredibly dangerous.
Yes.
Like I might be about to cause an accident. Dangerous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about recognizing these signs in ourselves.
Right.
It's also about being aware of them in others,
Right.
especially if you're a passenger in a car.
So if I notice my friend who's driving is exhibiting some of these warning signs, what should I do?
The manual is very clear on this point.
Okay.
Stopping to sleep is crucial when drowsiness sets in.
And it's not about trying to be a hero and push through,
No.
right?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
The manual actually compares ignoring sleepiness to driving with an empty tank.
Okay.
You're putting yourself and others at risk.
And I think we often underestimate how much fatigue impairs our judgment.
Sure.
We might think we can handle it, that we're still in control, but even mild sleep deprivation can significantly impact our reaction time, decision-making abilities, and overall cognitive function.
It's true.
So the message here is clear. Don't mess around with fatigue.
Yeah.
Listen to your body and prioritize sleep. It's like the manual is saying, hey, we get it. You're not always going to be able to get a perfect night's sleep.
Right.
Life happens. But then it goes on to give some surprisingly practical advice for those times when sleep just isn't possible.
It acknowledges that there will be times when we have to push through fatigue,
Yeah.
but it emphasizes strategies that can help us do so more safely.
Okay. Because we've all been there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Deadlines, long drives,
Yes,
that unexpected late night project.
of course.
It feels like sometimes sleep is the first thing to get sacrificed.
Yeah.
So what does the manual suggest for those moments when you absolutely can't hit the pillow?
Short naps.
Okay.
The manual highlights that even a quick 20 to 30-minute nap
Right.
can work wonders for your alertness and cognitive performance.
It's like hitting the reset button on your brain, even if it's just for a few minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, it's not a substitute for a full night's sleep, but strategically timed naps can be a valuable tool
Yeah.
when you're navigating a temporary period of sleep deprivation.
So if I'm feeling that afternoon slump hit, maybe instead of reaching for another cup of coffee,
Right.
a quick power nap is the better strategy.
It very well could be. The manual also stresses that caffeine and other stimulants are not a long-term solution for fatigue.
Right. We talked about that earlier. It's a temporary fix that can actually mask a much larger problem.
Exactly.
But what about those times when you're driving and you start to feel drowsy? Obviously, pulling over for a nap isn't always an option.
In those situations, the manual emphasizes being aware of your surroundings
Okay.
and, even more importantly, planning ahead.
Okay, so give us the actionable advice here. What can we do to stay safe on the road when fatigue starts to set in?
First and foremost, the manual says it's crucial to recognize those early warning signs we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
Yawning heavy eyelids, difficulty focusing.
Yep.
Those are all red flags that you need to find a safe place to pull over as soon as possible.
Don't wait until you're drifting out of your lane to take action.
Exactly. Be proactive. If you know you have a long drive ahead of show, you plan for regular breaks.
Okay.
Even if you don't feel tired, stop every couple of hours, get out of the car, stretch your legs,
Yeah.
get some fresh air,
Right.
and give your mind a chance to reset.
Building those breaks into your trip,
Yes,
just like you'd schedule a meal or a gas station stop.
precisely.
Yeah.
And while it might not always be feasible, the manual also recommends avoiding driving during those times when you'd normally be asleep,
Yeah.
even if it means adjusting your schedule.
Minimizing risks whenever possible. Now, there's one more point from this section that I found really interesting.
Okay.
The manual talks about the importance of regular checkups with your doctor.
This is something that often gets overlooked, but it's so crucial.
Right. It's easy to brush off fatigue as just a part of life,
Sure.
especially as we get older or busier.
Yeah.
But the manual highlights that there could be underlying medical conditions
Right.
that contribute to excessive tiredness.
Things like thyroid disorders,
Okay.
sleep apnea, vitamin deficiencies.
Right.
All of these can impact our energy levels and alertness.
So if you're constantly hitting a wall, even after making lifestyle changes and prioritizing sleep,
Yeah.
it's worth having a conversation with your doctor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't just assume it's all in your head.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a medical reason, and addressing it can make a world of difference.
You know, when I first saw the title of this next section, illness,
Okay.
I thought, okay, how does this fit in with everything else?
Yeah.
But the more I thought about it,
Sure.
the more I realized how connected it is to our overall well-being,
Of course.
which impacts everything, including our alertness.
It's about recognizing when our bodies and minds need a break,
Right.
even if it means adjusting our plans.
So walk us through this section. What does the manual say about illness and its impact on our ability to stay alert and function safely?
Well, it starts with a pretty straightforward statement. If you're feeling sick,
Yeah.
your ability to drive or operate machinery safely
Right.
is compromised.
Okay, that makes sense. I don't think anyone would argue with that.
Sure.
But I'm guessing there's more to it than just don't drive when you're sick.
You're right.
Yeah.
The manual goes on to emphasize that this doesn't just apply to physical illness,
Okay.
it applies to our mental health as well.
Now, that's interesting. So it's acknowledging that our mental state can impact our alertness just as much as a physical ailment.
Precisely.
Okay.
It emphasizes that if you're overly stressed,
Okay.
anxious,
Sure.
or just emotionally drained,
Right.
your reaction time and decision-making abilities can be just as impaired as if you had the flu.
Wow, that's a really powerful point. It's like we often push ourselves mentally thinking we can just power through anything, but our brains are just as susceptible to fatigue as our bodies.
Exactly. And the manual stresses the importance of being honest with ourselves about how we're feeling,
Right.
both physically and mentally.
Yeah.
Sometimes prioritizing our well-being means taking a break,
Yeah.
even if it means adjusting our plans.
It's about treating our mental health with the same seriousness and care that we give to our physical health. It's like recognizing that we're not machines.
Right.
We can't just keep going and going without consequences.
Yeah.
Sometimes the most productive thing we can do is hit pause and recharge.
Exactly. And I think that's a really valuable takeaway from this trucker's manual, this idea of respecting our limits, both physically and mentally, to prioritize safety and well-being.
It's like they're saying, hey, we know you have a job to do, but taking care of yourself is part of that job.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And it's not just about truckers. It's about all of us.
totally.
Mm-hmm.
So to wrap up this deep dive, you sent us a manual for truckers focused on staying alert on the road. And we ended up uncovering these incredibly relevant insights about alertness for like everyday life.
Yeah.
Who knew, right?
It goes to show that the principles of staying alert and engaged apply across the board, whether you're behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler or just navigating a busy day.
We talked about the sneaky ways sleep debt can creep up on us,
Sure.
the importance of working with our natural sleep-wake cycles instead of against them,
Right.
and those tempting quick fixes for fatigue that actually just mask a bigger issue,
Yeah.
plus how crucial it is to recognize those warning signs of drowsiness in ourselves and others.
And we can't forget about the often overlooked impact that our mental health has on our alertness and ability to function safely.
This deep dive has been a fantastic reminder that alertness isn't just about avoiding accidents. It's about being present, engaged, and making good decisions in all areas of life.
Whether we're at work behind the wheel or spending time with the people who matter most, being alert allows us to fully experience and engage with the world around us.
Love that. Being present and engaged, that's what I'm taking away from this.
That's great.
So as you go about your day, I challenge you to think about one area where you can prioritize your own alertness.
Okay.
Maybe it's setting a bedtime alarm, scheduling that doctor's appointment you've been putting off,
Yeah.
or even just giving yourself permission to step away and take a break when you feel that fatigue creeping in.
Even small changes can make a big difference.
They really can. And here's a final thought for you to ponder. What if we all started treating sleep with the same importance as we treat other aspects of our health, like diet and exercise?
That's a great question.
Not as a luxury,
Right.
but as a necessity for optimal performance,
Yeah.
both mentally and physically.
I love it.
Until next time, stay alert,
Yeah.
stay curious, and keep diving deep.